Get to the church blind! Get to the church blind! Go! Now!
I'm Pete Mitchell, and he's Peyton Jones, and you're listening to Hardcore Church Planning, the companion podcast to the Church Planner Podcast and Church Planner Magazine. Each week, we'll bring you interviews from planners who are in the trenches making it happen right now. These active church planners bear it all, share their successes, their failures, and what they'd wish they'd known when they were first starting out. Listen in to discover how God is working in their church plant.
Hey, church planner, this is Peyton Jones, and I am here on Hardcore Church Planning today with a good friend. It's weird because I'm going to give a little introduction here. I say he's a friend. He is technically, although it doesn't feel that way, technically, he's my boss, which, one day he'll have to fire me. But, we always talk about that. And then that day I'll say, I'm glad it was you, Mack. But I have on here a church planting training legend. His name is Mack Lake. He is also the developer of Leadership Pipeline together with, Will Mancini. And he is an author, co-wrote Kingdom First with Jeff Christopherson. He is one of my mentors, someone I am proud to call a friend, and someone I am honored and extremely blessed to work alongside. So, Mack, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Peyton. Man, I've been looking forward to this and excited to have the conversation with you.
Yeah, me too, man. I am just, this has been like a kid in a candy shop thinking about how we're going to go. And the thing with you, Mack, is, we are friends and we goof off and laugh a bunch, and we get a lot done for the kingdom. But the thing is that I think all of us that work alongside you, and I gotta be careful because I know you don't like to be put on a pedestal here, but all of us are kind of in awe of you. We watch you as a trainer and we listen to your philosophy about the Holy Spirit and breakthrough moments and all these things. And we're just in awe, but I think we're also in awe of the stuff you get done. And so today, what I want to do is really kind of share you with my audience, kind of let the church planners out there. Most people know who you are. I think you're one of the most connected guys. I rarely meet someone who hasn't heard of you or knows of you. But the reality is today, what we want to do is just kind of really get to know you a bit and what makes you tick. And you are a developer of leaders. And I just want to be able to share as our guys. Some of them are starting out in leadership. Some of them are starting out in their ministries, and they don't even know where to begin or where to turn. And I know I've constantly picked your brain. So, anyways, with that long introduction into that, Mack, tell us a little bit about your background, how you came to faith.
Yeah, Peyton, I grew up in a little country church in West Virginia. The church never had more than 70 people on a Sunday morning. As a little town of 500. I never thought about it till years later, but I don't know why they weren't in the Outreach Magazine's fastest growing churches in the country. They were reaching a large percentage of that little town. But it was a great little country church, and my mom and dad were in leadership there. They weren't the pastor, but they were in leadership there, and their love for the church and their love for Christ was just absolutely contagious. So at 9 years old, I remember standing on the second pew at Hanley Baptist Church, gripping it as tight as I could as Pastor Randy Kessler presented the gospel. And I walked down that morning and gave my life to Christ, and never looked back.
That's awesome. Well, one of the things I didn't say in your introduction is that you have also been the architect, and that's really the only way to put it. You're like a thought architect. You build cathedrals of training and learning, and we run something that you put together called Train the Trainer. That I don't care how many trainings you've been to. We watch people come in skeptical, and we train church planning trainers there. And this is your brainchild, but I mean, it is transformational. It is almost kind of like it's like a religious experience when you go there. You come out transformed, and we're looking at Jesus as a trainer. I mean, you've traced all this stuff back. You look at the brain and how God designed it, and shouldn't we be studying God's design? And I mean, it has really changed me. But all of that is a tool for something you built years ago, which was called at that time, Launch, which was a whole curriculum of church planner training. And now it's known as Multiply. And it is amazing. There is hands down no assessment out there for church planners like what you guys put together. And, I get to say I'm on the team, but I was the late guy to the party. I mean, this stuff was, we had Zaret and we had Michelle, and there were other people that did incredible work. But, you are really, I mean, it is comprehensive church planner training. I don't want to talk too much about it right now, but I really want to ask, how did you get involved with church planning?
Yeah, my church planting journey began really sort of when I was at Dallas Theological Seminary. Had no idea even what church planting was, but Aubrey Melfors, who wrote the book Planting Growing Churches, years and years ago, I was down in the gym at the seminary working out, and he was down there, and he said, "Hey, Mack, you need to take my church planting class." Well, I looked at him and I started laughing, and I said, "Aubrey, I'll never plant a church and I'll never be a senior pastor." And so, and I fully believed that. Well, 7 years later, I was, a few years later, I was at Pawleys Island Baptist Church. I was associate pastor, and all of a sudden God just grabbed my heart. There was a brand new community about 30, 40 miles from Pawleys Island that I heard about. Cindy and I drove up there, drove through the community. There was only about 25 homes in this community, nothing else within, 15 miles north, 5 miles south, 5 miles east, 5 miles west. So it was just this brand new community. The international paper had cleared the property they owned. It was 30,000 acres. And I heard it was going to be a city of 60,000 people one day. And I just thought, wow, wouldn't it be cool if somebody put a church there? And all of a sudden that desire was born inside of me, and God just kept bringing it back to me again and again and again. There was multiple confirmations that we were called to do this. So I finally went back to my pastor and said, "Hey, I feel like I'm called to plant a church, and I would be honored if you guys would send me." And he was enthusiastic about it, and so the church got behind me and launched me out to go plant that church in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Which in the church planning world is a way of saying he fired you. I'm just teasing.
Let me go. He lovingly let me leave. And what was really cool is he actually, they sent half, they had deacon leadership. They sent half the deacons with us, which was really cool because they all lived up that way.
Wow.
And they didn't have, they couldn't find a church up there. So they would drive all the way to Pawleys Island. And so when we said we were going to do this, I had some incredible leaders jump on board with us right from the very, very beginning.
Wow. That is so cool, man. And it makes such a big difference when you have a supportive sending church like that. One of the things that's really unique and I love about the Multiply assessment is that it's for husband and wife. It happens over almost like a weekend retreat or a couple days. There's marriage and family therapists, there's leadership experts, there's church planning. You run the gauntlet and you get really well assessed by this, but also your sending pastor has to be there. Like that is rock and roll right there. So Mack, as we're talking about this is it's not a light assessment. It's not hey, fill out this online form and you'll get an automated response. I mean, this is hardcore. Right. Tell us, over the years of doing those intense assessments, what have you noticed, in church planners? Like sometimes you and I will talk and you'll be like, he's going to make it. We just talked about Austin recently and you were like, hey, this guy's totally going to make it. Boom, boom, boom. What are the things that you've noticed that are patterns that emerge, or what are some of the things that tell you a church planner is going to make it?
Yeah, there's several things that I look for. Really, there's 8 indicators of a call that I look for. There's that pull that you can't resist. There's confirmation from mature believers. There's your wife and family. They're behind you and they believe in it. And we always tell the wives, you don't have to have the same intensity around the calling, but you both do need to have the same level of peace about the calling. And some guys unknowingly drag their wives into planting. Their wives feel like, oh, I'm unspiritual if I don't, get on board with this. But, I always challenge guys, really get to know your wife's heart. Does she have the same level of peace as you about this? We're looking for a pattern of multiplication. Have they multiplied anything? Have they started anything? Do they have the type of personality that can endure, the challenge and rigors of starting something? Do they have a passion for the lost? That's a huge one, because we always remind guys at the assessment, you don't have to plant a church to plant the gospel. And hopefully you're out there planting the gospel right now, and before you're planting a church. And then do they have a sending church? That's huge. Is there a church that has believed in them, that's behind them, that's sending them? In viral churches, Ed Stetzer, Warren Bird, statistics show that if you have a sending church, a church that's birthing you out, your likelihood of sustainability is increased significantly.
Yeah. That's my favorite part about the assessment is what you said just prior to that, and that is that you don't have to plant a church to plant the gospel. And I love that is really, Shark Tank, you do a Shark Tank there where they share their vision, and there's feedback, and sometimes the feedback is, well, have you been doing that now? And sometimes the guys are like deer in the headlights, and they'll be like, hey man, I don't get how you're suddenly going to start doing this because you got a church. The way Paul did it, he just did this stuff, and churches happen when you do this stuff. So I love that philosophy.
Yeah. I love what Jeff Christopherson says. He says, plant from evangelism, not for evangelism. And that's a great concept. And, a lot of guys that we give a caution to, hey, slow down. We encourage them. Hey, get into your community. Just start trying to lead people to Christ, and see what happens from there, and then come back and reassess,
Nice. So Mack, we've talked about all the different things that you've been a part of over the years. And I think all of us know you're kind of like you're big on productivity. I mean, you lead a productive life. You've raised up generations of leaders, behind you. You're currently doing that. I don't see you stopping anytime soon. Your passion is to develop leaders. And thing is I'm just going to say this to, our audience, cause it's weird because here we're having this conversation. We work together. We're friends, but I need to say this to everybody listening. When you get to know Mack, he is a Christ-like leader. He's not a leader who's just like, he believes in excellence, but it's not like going to a Tony Robbins seminar. It's not like, it's not Zig Ziglar. Sometimes you listen to guys on leadership. I see you, Mack, as a guy who you're looking to Christ to model your leadership off of him. And for me, when I met you, that was so refreshing because I've seen a lot of guys developing leadership where it's almost like Jesus has been, it's cool that they want to improve as leaders, but it's almost as if at times Christ has been completely left out of that process. And so for you, this is me. I am deviating a bit. I gotta be careful here, but I just felt that was worth pointing out. Because I want our guys to respect the fact that when you're talking about leadership development, I feel for you, it's a God-given passion. And so over the years, you've had this productivity that's come out of this because it's truly your calling, whether it's church planners or established pastors or whatever it is. But watching you is like a blur. You are kind of like, Wesley, the Apostle Paul, Spurgeon. Some of these guys moved really fast. I want to ask you, how have you been able, and all these different things that you've built or architect or lead or have, delegated, how have you found the secret to managing yourself and your schedule?
Yeah, thank you. I'm honored by that, and I appreciate that, and it's humbling that you say that and see that, and my life verse. I'm going to answer this first. My life verse is Psalm 78:72. David shepherded them with a pure heart, and he guided them with skillful hands. And the reason that's my life verse is it says the reason David was such a great leader is he had two elements. He had a leadership spirit and he had leadership skill. And I've watched leaders before, and some guys you look at them, you go, oh my gosh, nicest guy in the world. You see the fruit of the spirit in him, and you go, man, I'd love to follow that guy because I just love, who he is. And people will follow him for a while, but then they get discouraged because they're like, I love him, but he's not going anywhere. He's not making anything happen, Then there are other guys, they got leadership skill, and people will follow them because they knock things out. They get things done. They push barriers aside, and they're taking the hill. But after a while, people stop following them because they're like, hey, I love the vision, but I feel like I'm just one of the cogs in his machine. And I just feel like I'm being used and abused and not appreciated. And so I think when you combine leadership spirit and leadership skill, it creates a strength, a Christ-centered strength in your leadership. And I think that makes the biggest difference in the world. And it's easier to build a team when you can combine it both. And, we can all look at our life and say, hey, there are times I'm stronger in one than the other. And I need to up my spirit, a little bit here and display the fruit of the spirit a little bit more in my leadership. Or sometimes, hey, I need to strengthen my leadership side now.
Yeah.
But the bigger your vision, the bigger the team you have to have. And if you're not that type of leader, it's hard to build and maintain a strong team.
Yeah. How is that something that you've had since you started? Or is that something that you really had to work at and develop and up your game in? That's my train.
There's your train. Yeah.
You know the train.
Yeah. Work at. I remember years and years ago, I was voted the shyest kid in my class in 9th grade. And I was told early on, you're not a leader. You're not a leader. And I had a love for Christ and love for the church and wanted to do something significant with my life. But people say, oh, you're a nice guy, but you're not a leader, And there was so much truth to that. And it wasn't until I was 28 years old, I met a pastor who just for some reason took me in, and he started growing me as a leader. And for the first time, I had a conversion at that moment at 28 years old. After spending a year with him, I began to see, oh my goodness, I was a doer but not a leader, and God's called me a leader. And so his impact on my life gave me a passion for leadership. And so I've spent years trying to learn to be a leader, because Maxwell says there's natural born leaders and there are learned leaders. And when I read that chapter years and years ago in Developing a Leader Within You, chapter 1 or chapter 2, when I read that chapter, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to be a learned leader because I am not a natural leader. Now, the advantage is once you learn, when you learn leadership, you can reverse engineer it and understand why you do what you do and how you do what you do. Therefore, it makes it easier to teach others.
I remember watching you lead our team. It's the healthiest team I've ever been on. And I remember at one stage, you and I were in Vegas. We said we'd stay there, but no, we were running an assessment in Vegas. And I remember saying to you, because I was kind of in awe watching you lead things, watching you correct things, watching you. It's a big operation. And I remember just being in awe and coming up to you afterwards and just very humbly saying, hey, man, I'm just really blown away by what I've seen this weekend. Because for me personally, particularly when you're a church planner, I know a lot of our church planners out there, they may feel that they have reached a ceiling. I think I didn't realize where I was at until I started working alongside you, under you, however you want to put it, but joining your team showed me how much I didn't know and still had to learn. And that was exciting for me, because I think the worst thing for a leader is when you come to the end of what you know and you feel like you've hit a ceiling, you've stopped growing. And for me, I remember saying to you just very humbly, like, will you mentor me? Because there are things I don't know, like from what I've seen. And I remember you just smiling and going, that's what I've been doing. And what's cool to me is I think for all of our church planners out there, they're all going to come to a point where right now they're just trying to plant their church. Yeah. But for it to go beyond you, like our last competency of church planning in the Multiply curriculum is multiplication. If your vision and everything you're doing doesn't go beyond you, if it's not going to last beyond you and into the next generation, you're kind of wasting your time. You know what I mean? Like it's just, you can see that shift. And I think this happened with you based on your story, Mack, is that at a certain point, your ministry became about other people's ministry. And the fruit that's born has been incredible. So I want to ask you, all of our planners are balancing the same things that everybody does. Maybe they're balancing their ministry of church planning with their family life, with how they pay the bills. Maybe they're bivocational or whatever it is. How have you managed the various factors in your life? How have you learned to obtain balance in these different areas as an achiever?
Yeah, great question. And I think you have to have systems and rhythms. And rhythms means there are times your life's going to feel out of balance because you're going to be putting a disproportionate amount of energy towards your family. When you're on vacation, you're putting a disproportionate amount of energy toward your family and not towards work. And there are times you have to choose, where am I going to put my disproportionate amount of energy based on your priorities in your life? And so I think you have to be able to understand, hey, there are rhythms in my life. There is not a steady rhythm in my life. There are the rhythms are like waves. And so there are times for me, where I'm intensely deep into meeting for, 2 or 3 days, because I'm on the road all the time. So, and then there's times of withdrawing. And so you just have to know what your rhythms are. Mine are unusual because of the amount of time I'm on the road. But understand your rhythms and build those into your life. And then systems, I'm very goal oriented. So at the end of every year, I love December because that's when I set my goals for the next year. And so I write out my goals. I put them in Evernote. I have a daily tracker where I look at those every single day and ask the question, what is the one thing I can do this week to, in this particular goal that will make everything else easier or unnecessary? That's the goal it's the question from the book, The One Thing. And so, identify what is that one thing I can do. And then I think the other thing is, so many times we find our identity and our significance in doing things, and the more I do, the more significant I feel. Yep. And I think church planters need to learn to find their, not find their significance in doing, but they need to ask themselves the question, am I doing a lot of things? Am I doing more things? Or am I doing the right things? Yeah. And, the challenge I would give planters is in order to get more of the right things done, what can you give away? I remember it was probably the third church we planted out of our church when I was in Carolina Forest. The planter came to me and he sat down and he said, hey, give me a piece of advice. What's the one thing you tell me? I said, start building your successor within the first year. He said, what? I said, start building your successors in your first year and as successors. And so your potential successors. So in other words, wherever I go, no matter what role I'm in, as soon as I can, I start identifying people and asking myself the question, who can do what I do and what can I give them to help them learn to do what I do? And so, I don't lead our meetings anymore. You guys lead our meetings. And So I'll be there today. We have a meeting today. I'll be there, but I'm not leading it. And you guys are rotating leadership on that. Why should I lead it when you guys are fully even more capable than leading that? So asking ourselves the question, what can I give away? And that frees me up to do what only I can do.
That's amazing. And for church reproduction or multiplication, serial church planning, that is a powerful principle. I didn't know that's what you were operating on, but that is awesome. I can see it now that you've said it. And,
it's interesting because, when I'm teaching leadership pipeline to churches and I have a staff, the key staff in the room, and I'll ask this question: if there's a problem in your area of ministry on a Sunday morning with one of your team members, okay, who does that team member go to solve the problem? If the answer is you're not developing leaders.
Wow.
And so that one gets worship, the worship pastor in church, that gets worship pastors every single time. And it gets others too, but yeah, I don't want to be the go-to guy for all the problems. The team members should be able to go to the next person up, not always the top person in the area.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, one of the tools, that you have, and this will be a quick one, but one of the tools that you introduced me to, and I've been really impressed with, is the 1 minute manager. And I think that is a great leadership management style for, church planners who are limited on time, but it's also super effective. That was transformational for me. Do you want to just real quick touch on that?
Yeah, I was introduced to that by Dr. Howard Hendricks in seminary, and he had us read the book. The book is only 110 pages or so. It's a story format. And when I closed the book, I just said, God, that's the type of leader I want to be. It gave me a picture of the type of leader I wanted to be. 3 simple secrets of the 1 minute manager is 1 minute goal setting, 1 minute praising, and 1 minute redirections. 1 minute goal setting is you have the people who report to you write, I say 3 to 5 goals. And for us, it's every 4 months. Tell me what are 3 to 5 things you're going to accomplish. Write those out in 250 words or less. And then when we meet, we discuss those goals. It gives me the opportunity to say, hey, man, good job on this, good job on that. Hey, Peyton, I see you using your activator gift here. I see your learner gift here, your strength here. I see your strategic strength here, or redirect. Hey, let's think about approaching that differently. Or, a lot of times it's where are you stuck and how can I help? And so to me, it's a brilliant, simple methodology of leading. And I actually used it as a church planter. So when I planted a church, I had 7 key leaders before we launched. I chose my 7 key leaders probably about 6 months into our core development. Chose those 7 key leaders. I established a weekly meeting with them as a team. And then I set up a rhythm of one-on-ones with them. And every one of these lay leaders had 3 to 5 goals that they had to work on and focus on, and I would meet with them about. And it allowed me to know what they were moving forward, what they were trying to accomplish. And you take 7 people times 3 goals, that's 21 significant things you can move forward in a period of 4 months.
Wow.
So when you begin to look at it that way, why wouldn't anybody, want to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's been pretty cool for me. I do think that our, time together, we've mentioned before that it's kind of like smack talk, right? With mine. Maybe the other guy's more organized at first, but we cover them all, but we get there.
Yeah.
So I have one last question for you. And this is what we do every week. This is a, special, secret question. In fact, I put it on your list of the secret question, which if you listen to Hardcore Planning, you know what's coming. This is the question that our listeners kind of wait for every time. And the train for emphasis is just going to announce the contender. There it goes. And, my wife just walked in the office, but, she didn't have the big scorecard. She wasn't walking on like the boxing match with the card. But, anyways, if you, and I'm going to ask this because he's one of your best friends, you and Will Mancini were to get into a physical fist fight, who would win? Ding, ding, ding.
Well, here's the way I look at that. I could physically, I feel like I could beat him up, but I know the way he thinks, and he's so stinking strategic. He'd find a way to take me down. So he would win.
You know, it's interesting. It's interesting because that brings, you know, how my brain thinks like pop culture. Immediately you say that, and I think Batman versus Superman. You're Superman. You could take him out easily, but Batman always comes prepared. So
That's
I like
right.
this. You know, stay tuned.
He'd have a secret weapon. He would have a secret weapon.
He'd have
It
some
would be my
kryptonite.
kryptonite, and it would take me down.
He would have something up his sleeve for sure. But in fairness,
And
when
he
we-
would cheat. He would cheat too. That's the thing about Will. He would cheat.
Hey, man who doesn't cheat doesn't want to win bad enough. That's what I always say. Got that out of the Bible. Hey, the other thing is when we interviewed Will, it was so funny because if you know Mack, you know he's just a nice dude. And Will goes, "Oh man," he goes, "I can't fight Mack." He's like, "Man, I just let Mack win. If Mack's mad at me for some reason, he wants to fight me, I'm just going to lay down and let him punch me. I must have done something super bad." So anyways, hey, true to the Superman persona there. So, hey, Mack, you are an inspiration to us. Those that you've trained and those you continue to train. And thank you for your work for the kingdom. Thank you for your friendship. And thanks for coming on to Hardcore.
Well, listen, man, thank you for having me on here. And you know, I tell you every time I talk to you, I love you. I love what you're doing. And I believe your voice is one of the strongest voices and champion voices for church planters in this country. And keep up the great work. You are my church planting hero, seriously. And love what you're doing and thankful for you.
All right. Well, hey, thank you. And guys, remember, Arnold?
Remember, if you are called to church planting, go hardcore or go home.
You've been listening to Hardcore Church Planning. Hardcore Church Planning has been brought to you by the Church Planter Podcast and the Church Planter Magazine, which is available in the App Store for both Apple and Android devices. If you like this episode, leave us a positive review. If you didn't like this episode, we'll be happy to give you your money back.